If you had told me, on any ordinary Tuesday, that my life was a house of cards, I would have laughed you right out of my kitchen. My kitchen. That was the heart of it all, you see. The warm, yellow-walled room where the morning sun would stretch itself across the terracotta tiles, where the scent of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon toast was the perfume of our family's happiness. It was in that kitchen, on a day just like any other, that I felt the first, almost imperceptible tremor. Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand the collapse, you have to first see the beautiful, sturdy structure that stood before the fall. His name was David. David, with hands that could cradle our newborn daughter Lily, with a tenderness that made me weep, and that same year build a treehouse for our son Ben, with a strength that seemed unshakable. We met in college, two kids who thought we had the world figured out. He was studying business, all sharp lines and ambitious dreams. I was immersed in literature, lost in the poetry of others, never imagining I'd one day have a story of my own so filled with drama and pain. He was the solid ground to my flighty clouds. He'd say, "Ruth, your head is always in a book." And I'd smile and say, "And your feet are always on the pavement. We balance each other." And for 25 years, I truly believed we did. That Tuesday started with the familiar, comfortable symphony of our morning routine. Ben, 16 and all limbs and sullen grunts, was shoveling cereal into his mouth while simultaneously scrolling on his phone. "Mom, did you sign the permission slip for the field trip?" It was on the counter, like for 3 days. "I signed it, honey. It's in your backpack. And for heaven's sake, chew with your mouth closed." Lily, at 12, was my little shadow, her worries worn openly on her face. "Mom, I think this presentation on the solar system is going to be a disaster. What if I forget the order of the team? Planets? My very educated mother just served us noodles. That's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Right?" I squeezed her shoulder, pouring orange juice into her glass. "Perfect. You'll be perfect. And even if you forget, the world will keep spinning. I promise." Then there was David. My David. He entered the kitchen, a whirlwind of crisp cotton and citrus cologne, his tie perfectly knotted, his hair still damp from the shower. He moved to the coffee machine, his movements efficient, practiced. He was already halfway out the door in his mind, mentally in a boardroom or on a conference call. "Big day today, Ruth," he said, not quite looking at me, his focus on his phone as he scanned an email. "The Henderson merger. This could be the one that finally lets me breathe." I remember feeling a small pang of something, not worry, not yet. It was more like a faint dissonant note in a familiar song. He'd been talking about the one that lets me breathe for years. There was always another merger, another deal, another mountain to climb. I used to admire his drive. Lately, it felt less like ambition and more like a frantic running. "You work too hard, David," I said, placing a plate of eggs and toast in front of his usual seat. "Come on, sit for 5 minutes. Fuel up." He gave me a distracted smile, a quick, fleeting thing that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Can't, honey. I'll grab something later." He leaned in, pecked my cheek, the gesture feeling more habitual than heartfelt. "Love you. Don't wait up, it's going to be a late one." And just like that, he was gone. The sound of the garage door opening and closing, the purr of his sedan fading down the street. The kitchen felt suddenly quieter, larger. Later that afternoon, I was in the living room, folding a mountain of laundry, the warm, clean smell of the clothes, a small comfort. The television was on, some talk show chattering in the background. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was Auntie Grace. "Ruthie, my love, how is your day?" Her voice was like honey and sunshine, a warm blanket on a cold day. "Oh, you know, Grace, domestic bliss, laundry, grocery lists, trying to remember the names of all Jupiter's moons for Lily," Grace chuckled. "The important work. Listen, Clara and I were thinking of coming by this weekend. She's found a new recipe for some kind of dreadful sugar-free, gluten-free muffin that she insists on sharing with the family, and I need you as a buffer." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "Of course, I'll make a pot of real coffee to counteract them. How is Clara?" "Oh, you know Clara. She's currently waging war against the Homeowners Association over the height of her hedges. She says they're infringing on her botanical sovereignty. The woman is a force of nature." Talking to Grace always centered me. She and Clara, my mother's sisters, had been my anchors since my parents passed away 10 years ago in a car accident. Grace, with her softness and endless empathy, and Clara, with her sharp tongue and even sharper mind, were the twin pillars of my support system. They were the ones who had held me together when my world shattered the first time. I couldn't have imagined then that a much greater shattering was on the horizon. That evening, after helping Lily with her presentation and negotiating screen time with Ben, the house settled into a deep quiet. I sat on the sofa, a book open in my lap, but I wasn't reading. I was waiting. The clock on the mantel ticked past 10, then 11. I called David's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. "He's in a meeting," I told myself. "The signal is bad in that conference center." I'd told this same story to myself so many times over the past year that I almost believed it. When his key finally turned in the lock, it was past midnight. I heard the careful, quiet sounds of him trying not to wake me, the soft click of the door, the gentle tread of his shoes on the hardwood floor. I pretended to be asleep, my head leaning against the back of the sofa, my breathing even. I heard him pause in the doorway of the living room, his silhouette dark against the hall light. He stood there for a long moment, just watching me. I remember feeling a strange tension in the air, a thickness. Then he sighed, a sound so heavy and full of a weariness I couldn't place, that it sent a cold trickle down my spine. He came closer, and I caught a scent. Not just his cologne, but something else. A faint, floral note. Perfume. It was a scent I didn't recognize, something light and powdery, unlike the citrusy or musky scents I wore. "David?" I murmured, pretending to stir. He jumped, startled. "Ruth, you're awake. I was waiting for you." I sat up, switching on the lamp beside me. The sudden light made him blink. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his shoulders slumped. But there was something else in his face, a guardedness, a wall that hadn't been there a few years ago. The meeting ran late. Then we had to take the clients out for drinks. You know how it is. He waved a hand dismissively and began loosening his tie. "You smell like perfume," I said, the words out of my mouth before I could stop them. I tried to sound casual, curious, not accusatory. He froze for a fraction of a second, his fingers still on his silk tie. Then he let out a short, forced laugh. "That's probably Brenda from accounting. She wears enough perfume to asphyxiate a small horse." She hugged me goodbye. "You know how she gets after a few glasses of Chardonnay." It was a plausible explanation. Brenda was a lovely, overly affectionate woman in her 60s who did, in fact, wear strong perfume, but the explanation felt too quick, too ready. It felt like a line he'd prepared. Right, I said softly, my eyes searching his. Brenda. He avoided my gaze, leaning down to give me a proper kiss. This one felt different. It was quick, closed-mouthed. I'm beat, Ruth. I'm going to hit the shower and then crash. Don't stay up too late. He headed for the stairs, and I was left alone in the lamplight, the faint, powdery floral scent lingering in the air around me. I picked up my book, but the words blurred on the page. That was the moment, right there, in the quiet of my safe. Yellow kitchen world. That was the first grain of sand shifting, the first tiny, almost silent crack appearing in the foundation of my entire life. I didn't know it then, but the house was already beginning to fall. A crack, once it starts, has a life of its own. It doesn't just sit there, politely waiting for you to notice it. It grows. It seeks out the weakest points, the hidden stresses in the structure. In the days and weeks that followed that late Tuesday night, the world outside my window looked exactly the same. The sun still rose, the kids still went to school, the laundry basket still magically refilled itself. But inside me, a silent, cold vigilance had taken root. I became an archaeologist of my own life, sifting through the ordinary moments, looking for shards of the truth. The perfume incident was never mentioned again. David was attentive, almost too attentive. He started bringing me flowers on random weekdays, not the usual supermarket bouquets I'd buy for myself, but elegant, expensive arrangements from a florist across town I'd never heard of. Casablanca lilies and freesia. The card always read the same. Thinking of you. Love, David. I should have been thrilled. This was the romance I'd missed, the spontaneous gesture I'd craved. But instead of warmth, the flowers filled me with a strange dread. They felt like an apology for a sin I didn't know about. They felt like a peace offering from a battlefield I couldn't see. One Saturday, he announced he was taking us all out for a fancy dinner. Ben grumbled about having to wear a collared shirt, and Lily was thrilled at the prospect of getting to order Shirley Temples. The restaurant was all dark wood and soft lighting, the kind of place where the menus don't have prices. David was in his element, charming the waiter, recommending wines, telling animated stories about work. He was performing the role of the perfect husband and father, and he was doing a brilliant job. During a lull, while the kids were distracted by their desserts, he reached across the table and took my hand. His skin was warm, his grip familiar. I know I've been distant lately, Ruth, he said, his voice low and sincere. This Henderson deal, it's a monster. It's consuming me. But I promise, once it's sealed, things will go back to normal. We'll take that trip to Italy we've always talked about. Just you and me. His eyes were pleading, willing me to believe him. And a part of me, the part that had loved him for half my life, wanted to so desperately. Italy sounds wonderful, I whispered, my throat tight. He smiled, a genuine-looking smile this time, and squeezed my hand. It's a promise. The crack sealed over, just a little. Hope, I was learning, was a powerful spackle. But then, a few nights later, the crack split wide open. It was around 2 in the morning. I woke up thirsty, my mouth dry. The space next to me in bed was empty. This wasn't entirely unusual. David sometimes had trouble sleeping and would go downstairs to read. I padded out to the hallway and saw a sliver of light under the door of his home office. I was about to push the door open and ask if he wanted some warm milk when I heard his voice. He was talking on the phone. His tone stopped me cold. It wasn't his business voice, clipped and efficient. It wasn't his tired husband voice. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, soft, intimate, laced with a tenderness that felt like a physical blow. "I know, baby, I know," he was murmuring. It's killing me too. Soon. I promise you, it will all be settled soon. No, don't cry. Please don't cry. You know you're my heart. Everything I do is for you, for us. I stood there in the dark hallway, my bare feet cold on the hardwood floor, my hand pressed against my mouth, to stop any sound from escaping. The words echoed in the silent house, each one a nail being driven into the coffin of my old life. You're my heart. Everything I do is for you. Who was he talking to? It wasn't Brenda from accounting. This was a language of love, of shared secrets, of a future being planned. This was the voice he used to use with me in the early days when we were young and the world was ours. I heard him sigh, a soft, weary sound. I have to go. She's asleep. I'll call you tomorrow from the office. I love you. Good night, my Elena. Elena. The name hung in the air, a ghost I could now put a name to. It was a beautiful name. Exotic. It sounded nothing like Ruth. I crept back to bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I lay there in the dark, the cold seeping from my feet all the way up to my heart. When David finally slipped back into bed an hour later, his body radiating a chill from being up, I pretended to be asleep. He didn't touch me. The next morning, I was a ghost in my own kitchen. I moved through the motions, pouring cereal, making lunches, but I felt disconnected, as if I were watching a play about a happy family. David was bright and cheerful, talking about a golf game he had planned for the weekend. "You're quiet this morning, Ruth," he said, sipping his coffee. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the tiny lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a decade ago, the slight thinning of his hair at the temples. I saw the man I had built a life with, and I realized I didn't know him at all. "I didn't sleep well," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He reached out and rubbed my arm. "You work too hard. You should take a spa day." My treat. The kindness in his touch felt like a violation. I wanted to scream, to throw the coffee pot at him, to demand to know who Elena was. But I didn't. I had children in the next room. I had a life to protect. So I just nodded and said, "Maybe I will." Later that day, after everyone had left, the silence of the house was deafening. I wandered into David's home office. It was a neat, masculine room, dark wood desk, leather chair, bookshelves filled with business titles and binders. It had always been his sanctuary. Now, it felt like a crime scene. I didn't know what I was looking for. A receipt? A love note? A photograph? My hands trembled as I opened the top drawer of his desk. Paper clips, pens, a stapler. Nothing. I tried the filing cabinet. It was locked. That was new. He'd never locked his filing cabinet before. My eyes fell on the family computer, the one we all shared for homework and printing recipes. Maybe he'd been careless. I sat down and woke it up. I went straight to the browser history. It had been cleared, completely clean. My heart sank. Then, a thought occurred to me. I opened the password manager we used for household accounts. We had a shared master password, a system we'd set up years ago for convenience. Maybe, just maybe, he was still using it for some things. My fingers shook as I typed in the master password. The vault opened. I scanned the list of saved logins, electric company, bank, the kids' school portals. And then I saw it, an entry I didn't recognize. The website was for a private, secure email service. The username was Ellington72. Ellington was his mother's maiden name. He never used it. This was it. This was the secret door. I clicked on the entry. A box popped up, the password field filled with a long string of asterisks. I clicked Show Password. It was a complex string of letters, numbers, and symbols. I had no way of memorizing it. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, my hands slick with sweat, and took a picture of the screen. Just then, I heard the garage door opener rumble to life. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So, if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. He was home early. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse roaring in my ears. I hurried out of the office and was halfway to the kitchen when the door from the garage opened. "Honey, I'm home," David called out, his voice echoing through the house. It was the same greeting he'd used for 20 years. But now, it sounded like a line from a play, delivered by an actor who had already checked out of the performance. I stood in my warm, yellow kitchen, the photo of that password burning a hole in my phone, the name, Elena, echoing in my mind. The crack was no longer just a crack. It was a chasm, and I was standing on the edge, staring into the darkness, knowing that one more step would send me falling. The foundation wasn't just sand anymore. It was quicksand. There is a special kind of loneliness that comes from suspecting the person who shares your bed. It's a solitude that crowds you in the middle of a family dinner, that whispers to you during a movie, that sits like a third passenger in the car during a Sunday drive. I carried this new, heavy secret inside me for a week, and it was eating me alive. I felt like I was wearing a mask, playing the part of Ruth, while the real me was screaming in a soundproof room. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed an outside voice, a reality check. I needed my aunts. I invited them over under the guise of taste-testing Clara's latest culinary experiment, which turned out to be energy bites made of dates, flaxseed, and something that looked suspiciously like sawdust. We were in the kitchen, the three of us, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. Lily was at a friend's house, Ben was holed up in his room, and David was, of course, at work. "So," Clara began, her sharp eyes missing nothing as she took a delicate sip of the strong coffee I'd made. "You've got the look of a woman who's chewing on more than date paste. What's going on, Ruth?" Grace, who was patiently trying to dissect an energy bite with her fork, looked up immediately, her face soft with concern. "Ruthie, is everything all right?" And just like that, the dam broke. The words tumbled out of me in a choked, messy torrent. The late nights, the perfume, the exhaustion, the strange gifts of flowers. The phone call in the middle of the night, the name Elena, the locked filing cabinet, the secret email account. I showed them the picture on my phone. I held nothing back. To speak it aloud was to make it real, and the reality was terrifying. When I finished, I was crying, hot, silent tears streaming down my face. Grace was immediately out of her chair, her arms around me, pulling my head to her soft shoulder. "Oh, my darling girl. Oh, my sweet Ruth." Clara, however, did not move. She placed her coffee cup down on the saucer with a precise click. Her face was a granite mask of grim understanding. "I knew it," she said, her voice low and hard. "I've seen the change in him for over a year now. The way his eyes slide away when you talk to him. The new watch, the constant business trips. It stinks to high heaven, Ruth. It stinks of another woman." "Clara," Grace admonished, stroking my hair. "We don't know that for sure. There could be another explanation. David has always been a good man, a good provider. This merger. Stress does strange things to people. Stress doesn't make you whisper 'You're my heart' to another woman named Elena at 2 in the morning," Clara retorted, not unkindly, but with a brutal finality. She looked directly at me. Ruth, you need to face this. Head on. You are not going crazy. Your instincts are screaming at you for a reason. Listen to them. But what do I do? I whispered, my voice ragged. Do I confront him? What if he denies it? What if he has some explanation? What if I'm wrong? Even as I said it, I knew I wasn't. Confronting him now would be a tactical error, Clara said, her tone shifting into that of a general planning a campaign. He's prepared for that. He has his lies ready. The perfume is Brenda. The phone call was a misdial. The email is for a side project he didn't want to worry you about. No, you need evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable evidence. Grace looked pained. Clara, this isn't one of your courtroom dramas. This is their marriage. Precisely, Clara said. And it's being attacked from the inside. You need to know what you're dealing with, Ruth. Is this a midlife fling? A sordid little affair? Or is it something more? The locked filing cabinet. That suggests something more. That suggests financials. Secrets that have paper trails. The word financials sent a new, deeper chill through me. Our lives were so intertwined. The mortgage, the savings, the college funds, it was all shared. The idea that David could be jeopardizing that he had secrets with paper trails, was a level of betrayal I hadn't even allowed myself to consider. How? I asked, feeling small and hopeless. How do I get evidence? I'm not a spy. I'm a mother who folds laundry. You are a smart, capable woman, Clara said firmly. Start with what you have. That email password. Wait for a moment when he's distracted, when you're sure he'll be gone for hours, and you get on that computer. You see what's in that account. And the filing cabinet. Where does he keep the key? I thought back. David had a habit of his key ring, I said slowly. He has a separate, small key on his key ring, one I never asked about. I always assumed it was for the shed. The shed doesn't have a lock that's sophisticated, Clara countered. It's for the filing cabinet. You need to get that key, Ruth. You need to make a copy. The sheer audacity of it made my head spin. Snooping on his email was one thing. It felt like a violation of his privacy, even if he had forfeited that right. But physically, taking his keys, sneaking off to a hardware store, it felt so calculating, so seedy. I can't, I breathed. It feels so deceitful. He is being deceitful. Clara's voice was sharp. You are not the villain in this story, Ruth. You are gathering intelligence to protect yourself and your children. Do not for 1 second feel guilty about securing your own flak jacket in a war he started. Grace squeezed my hand. She's right, my love. As hard as it is to hear, she's right. You need to know the truth, whatever it is, for your own sanity. I looked from Grace's compassionate, worried face to Clara's resolute, determined one. They were my counsel of war. One offering the comfort I desperately needed, the other offering the steel spine I lacked. I took a deep, shuddering breath and wiped my tears with the heel of my hand. Okay, I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. Okay, the key first. The opportunity came that Friday. David announced he was playing golf with a client, a whole Saturday affair. He left at 6 in the morning, giving me a sleepy kiss goodbye. The moment the garage door closed, I was out of bed. His keys were on the dresser, where he always left them. I picked them up, the metal cold in my hand. The guilt was a physical weight, but Clara's words echoed in my mind. You are not the villain. I drove to a hardware store in the next town over, my heart pounding the entire way. I felt like everyone could see my shame, my betrayal. The young man at the key-cutting counter was bored, barely looking at me as he made a copy of the small, brass key. I paid in cash, shoved the new key deep into my pocket, and drove home, my hands clenched on the steering wheel. I had the key. I had the password. Now, I needed the courage. It was Grace who provided the final push. She called me that evening, after David had returned, sunburned and smelling of beer and grass. "Ruthie," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I've been thinking. However this turns out, you need to remember who you are. You are not just David's wife. You are Ruth. You are the one who held your family together when your parents died. You are the one who sat with Ben for nights on end when he had those terrible ear infections as a baby. You are the one who helps Lily face her fears every single day. That strength is in you. It has always been in you. This investigation, it's not about spying. It's about you finding your footing again. It's about you reclaiming your right to the truth." I held on to those words that night as I lay beside my sleeping husband. I repeated them like a mantra. I am Ruth. I have strength. The whispers in the dark were no longer just of suspicion and fear. They were now also whispers of a dawning, ferocious need for the truth. The hunt was on, and the prey was my own life. Courage, I discovered, isn't a roaring lion. It's a quiet, cold knot in your stomach that allows you to do what must be done, even when every fiber of your being is screaming in protest. The copied key felt like a lead weight in the pocket of my jeans. The password photo was a secret burn on my phone. For days, I carried them with me, waiting for the perfect, terrible moment. It came on a Wednesday. David had a full-day executive retreat, followed by a dinner. He'd be gone from 7 in the morning until at least 10 at night. The kids were both in school. The house would be empty, silent, and mine for a solid 8 hours. I kissed him goodbye that morning, my lips feeling like traitors. I waved to the kids as they boarded the school bus. Then I stood in my quiet kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and knew the time had come. I was terrified. What if I found nothing? What if my aunts and I were wrong, and I was about to violate the trust of a man who was simply stressed and distant? The hope that I was wrong was almost as painful as the fear that I was right. I decided to start with the office. The computer felt less like a physical violation than breaking into the filing cabinet. I sat in his leather chair, the seat still molded to the shape of his body. It felt like sitting in a stranger's skin. I opened the laptop, my fingers icy. I opened the password manager, my heart thudding against my ribs. I clicked on the entry for the secret email. D. Ellington, 7-2. I clicked Show Password. The string of characters appeared. I opened a private browsing window so it wouldn't save history and navigated to the email service. It was a sleek, minimalist login page. With a deep breath, I typed in the username and carefully copied the complex password. I hit enter. The screen blinked and then loaded. I was in. My stomach plummeted. A part of me had been hoping the password would be wrong, that it was an old account he didn't use anymore. But there it was, the inbox, dozens of emails. The most recent one was from just last night. The sender, Elena Vasquez. The subject line, missing you. I clicked on it. The world narrowed to the glowing screen in front of me. My dearest David, another night alone. Mateo asked again when his papa is coming home. I told him soon that you are working very hard for us. It's getting harder to believe, my love. This soon feels like forever. The rent is due again on the 1st, and you said you would have the extra this month for the private school deposit. He needs to be enrolled by the 15th. I can't do this on my own. I see the way the landlord looks at me. I'm scared. Please, David. You promised us a life, a real life. Not these stolen hours in a hotel room while your other family has you for Christmas and birthdays and every ordinary Tuesday. I love you. I believe in you. But my faith is wearing thin. Call me. Tomorrow. I need to hear your voice. All my love, your Elena. I read it once. Then again. And a third time. The words didn't make sense. They were in English, but they formed a narrative that was impossible. Mateo, Papa, other family, rent, private school. This wasn't an affair, this was a life. He had another son, a child named Mateo. How old was he? The private school deposit that sounded like a young child. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I felt lightheaded, the room tilting around me. I scrolled down, my vision blurring. There were more emails. Dozens more. I clicked on one from a few weeks ago. David, the transfer came through. Thank you, my love. It's enough for this month, but just barely. The car needs new tires. I feel like a burden, and I hate it. I just want to be your wife, openly. I want to stop hiding. When, David, when? Wife. The word was a physical blow. I pushed back from the desk, stumbling to the small trash can in the corner, and vomited. Dry heaves racked my body as the truth, ugly and immense, crashed over me. David wasn't just having an affair. He had a second family, a woman he called his wife, a son. He was paying their rent. He was funding their life, with our money. I don't know how long I knelt there on the floor, trembling, tears and sweat cooling on my face. But eventually, a cold, clear fury began to cut through the shock. He had a son. He had another child, while I was home helping Lily with her solar system project and begging Ben to do his homework. He was playing Papa to another boy while telling our son he was too busy for a game of catch. I got to my feet, my legs shaky but determined. The email was one thing. It was digital. It could be denied as fantasy, as the ramblings of a mistress. I needed paper. I needed the proof that couldn't be deleted. I walked to the filing cabinet, the copied key in my hand. It slid into the lock smoothly, with a soft click. I pulled the drawer open. It was filled with hanging files, neatly labeled. Taxes, mortgage, investments, insurance. I pulled out the investments file. It was thick. I carried it to the desk and began to spread the papers out. I saw statements for accounts I had never seen before. A checking account at a bank I didn't recognize. The statements were addressed to David Ellington at an address in Oak Creek, a town about 2 hours away. The transactions were a roadmap to his double life. Monthly automatic payments to Oak Creek Manor apartments. Large withdrawals in cash. Transfers to an account under the name Elena Vasquez. There was a savings account for Mateo Ellington. A college fund. Then I found the life insurance policy. It was a massive policy, taken out 2 years ago. The beneficiary was not me. It was not our children. It was Elena Vasquez, spouse. Spouse. The room swam again. Was he married to her? Legally? Bigamy? The word seemed like something from a Victorian novel, not from my life in the suburbs. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely turn the pages. I kept digging, a frantic, desperate archaeologist unearthing a city of lies buried beneath my own home. And then, at the very back of the drawer, tucked inside a folder marked Old Receipts, I found it. The box. It was a small, fireproof lockbox, the kind you keep important documents in. It was locked. I looked at the key ring I had copied. There was one other small key on it, one I hadn't identified. I tried it. It didn't fit. Frustration and panic rose in my throat. Where was the key? I thought back. David had a hiding place. When we first moved in, he'd joked about having a bug-out box in case of emergency. He'd shown me, once. He'd said, "If anything ever happens, Ruth, it's in the basement, behind the loose brick to the left of the water heater." I hadn't thought about that in 15 years. I flew down the basement stairs, the cold, damp air hitting my face. The water heater hummed in the corner. I ran. My hands over the concrete wall, my fingers searching for the irregularity. I found it a brick that was slightly more recessed than the others. I pried at it with my fingernails, and it wiggled, then came free. Behind it, in the dark cavity, was a single key. I snatched it up and ran back upstairs, my heart hammering. I fit the key into the lockbox. It turned. I lifted the lid. Inside, there were more documents. A passport. I opened it. It was David's photo, but the name was David Ellington. He had a second, legal identity. There were photos. I picked one up with a trembling hand. It was David, looking relaxed and happy, his arm around a beautiful, dark-haired woman in her late 30s. Elena, and in front of them, a little boy, beaming, missing 2 front teeth. He had David's eyes. There was no denying it. This was his son, Matteo. He looked to be about 6 years old. 6 years. This had been going on for at least 6 years. Through Lily starting school. Through my father's death. Through family vacations and anniversaries and quiet nights on the sofa. He had been living another full life. Beneath the photos was a single, legal-looking document. I pulled it out. The heading made the blood drain from my face. Last Will and Testament of David Ellington. I skimmed the legalese. It was dated just 8 months ago. It left a small, token amount to my children, Benjamin and Lily Anderson. Our children. He used his fake surname for them. And the rest, the house, the investments, the life insurance payout, everything was left to my beloved wife, Elena Vasquez, and our son, Matteo Ellington. He had written us out of his will. He had disinherited his own children. Ben and Lily were relegated to a footnote, while his secret son and his secret wife were to inherit the life we had built together. I sank to the floor, the will clutched in my hand, the photographs of his other family scattered around me like fallen leaves. The box in the basement hadn't, just held secrets. It held the blueprint for our destruction. It held the evidence that the man I loved had not only stopped being my husband years ago, he had actively become my enemy. The foundation wasn't just cracked, it had been deliberately demolished, and I was lying in the rubble. There is a numbness that follows a cataclysm, a blessed, hollow silence in the soul where the pain should be. I sat on the floor of David's office for a long time, surrounded by the scattered evidence of my life's annihilation. The photographs of his smiling second family, the will that disinherited my children, the financial statements that laid bare the theft of our security. They were just objects, paper and ink. I couldn't connect them to the man who had made love to me in this very house, who had taught Ben to ride a bike, who had held my hand at my parents' funeral. The sound of the school bus rumbling down our street finally jolted me back into my body. The children. Ben and Lily were coming home. The thought was a lightning strike of pure terror. I scrambled to my feet, my movements jerky and frantic. I shoved the documents back into the lockbox, the will folded and tucked into my bra, a cold, hard secret against my skin. I put the box back in the filing cabinet, locked it, returned the key to its hiding place in the basement. I smoothed my hair, wiped my face with a cold cloth in the kitchen sink, and tried to erase the horror from my eyes. When the front door burst open and Lily came in, chattering about her day, followed by the sullen thud of Ben's backpack hitting the floor, the mask I slipped on was the heaviest thing I had ever worn. "Hi, sweetie. How was school?" My voice sounded tinny and false to my own ears. "Good. I got a B+ on the solar system presentation. Miss Davies said I spoke really clearly, even though I mixed up Saturn and Jupiter for a second." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you." I pulled her into a hug, holding her too tightly, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, a scent of innocence and a world that no longer existed. Ben grunted something about being hungry and headed for the pantry. He was so tall, almost a man, with a shadow of the father he still idolized on his face. The thought made me feel sick. I made them snacks, I asked about their homework, I performed the ballet of motherhood by rote, my mind screaming in a soundproof room. Every few minutes, I would touch my chest, feeling the crinkle of the folded wool through my blouse. It was my reality. This kitchen, these children, were the dream. As soon as I could, I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. Auntie Grace answered on the first ring. "Ruthie?" I couldn't speak. A raw, guttural sob tore from my throat. Ruth, what is it? What's happened?" Her voice was sharp with alarm. "He has another son." The words were choked, barely intelligible. "His name is Mateo. He's 6. And a woman, Elena. He has a will. He left them everything. Grace, he left our children nothing." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "Oh, my dear Lord. Clara. Clara, get on the other phone." A moment later, Clara's crisp, clear voice came on the line. "What's the situation?" I repeated it. The story tumbling out in fractured pieces, the emails, the bank statements, the photos, the will. Clara didn't gasp. She didn't cry. When I finished, there was a beat of silence, and then she said, "Right, this is what we're going to do. You are not to confront him, do you hear me, Ruth? You are not to say a word. But I have to. You have to do nothing of the sort." She interrupted, her voice like steel. "If you confront him now, he will spin a web of lies. He will gaslight you. He might empty the accounts and disappear. You are at a severe tactical disadvantage. You need a professional." "A lawyer?" Grace asked, her voice trembling. "A lawyer? Yes. The best divorce attorney we can find. But first, a private investigator. A PI. I whispered, the term feeling like something from a movie. "You have documents, Ruth. You have a name and an address. But a judge will want more than printed emails, which he can claim you fabricated. You need photographic evidence. You need proof of the relationship, of the child, of the cohabitation. You need to turn this from a suspicion into an undeniable, documented fact. We need to find this woman." The following days were a blur of silent agony. I moved through the house like a ghost, my every sense heightened, watching David, studying him. I saw the lies now, not as isolated incidents, but as part of a vast, intricate tapestry of deception. The business trips to Oak Creek, the client dinners that were family dinners with his other son, the bonus that was never deposited into our joint account because it had gone to pay for Mateo's private school. I found the business card for the investigator. Clara recommended a man named Arthur Brigham, a former police detective with a reputation for discretion and results. Calling him was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Sitting in my car in the grocery store parking lot, My voice a hushed, ashamed whisper. I gave him David's name, his photo, the Oak Creek address from the bank statements, the name Elena Vasquez. I need to know everything, I finished, my cheeks burning with humiliation. I understand, Mrs. Anderson, he said, his voice calm and reassuringly neutral. We'll be in touch. The wait was excruciating. Every phone call from an unknown number sent my heart into my throat. David was being particularly affectionate, which felt like a special kind of torture. He brought home my favorite Thai food. He suggested we plan that trip to Italy for the following summer. Each kind gesture was a lie. Each touch felt like a violation. I had to physically stop myself from flinching when he put his arm around me. A week later, Arthur Brigham called. He asked to meet in person at his office. I told David I was going to a book club meeting. The lie came easily now. I was learning. Arthur's office was nondescript in a professional building near the city center. He was a man in his late 50s with a kind, weary face and calm eyes. He didn't offer false sympathy, for which I was grateful. Mrs. Anderson, he began, opening a plain manila folder on his desk. We've confirmed the subject's activities. David Anderson, using the name David Ellington, maintains a residence at the Oak Creek Manor Apartments with Elena Vasquez and a minor child, Mateo Ellington, age 6. He slid a photograph across the desk. It was taken from a distance, but it was clear. David, in jeans and a casual shirt I'd never seen before, was pushing a little boy on a swing in a park. The boy was laughing, his head thrown back. David was smiling, a relaxed, unguarded smile I hadn't seen in years. It was the photograph from the lockbox, but alive and real, and happening now. I felt the air leave my lungs. Arthur slid another photo. David, Elena, and Mateo walking into a grocery store, David's hand resting on the small of her back. Another, David carrying a sleeping Mateo into the apartment building. He spends an average of 3 nights a week there, Arthur said, his voice even. He attends parent-teacher conferences at the child's school, Street Ignatius Academy. He is listed on the school emergency forms as the father. He and Miss Vasquez present themselves as a married couple. We've gathered financial records, which you already have, and witness statements from a neighbor, who confirms the subject has lived there part-time for approximately 6 years. 6 years. The number was a physical weight. And the woman? I managed to ask, my throat tight. Elena? Arthur paused, then slid one final photograph toward me. It was a close-up, taken as she was getting into her car. She was beautiful. Younger than me, with long, dark hair and intelligent dark eyes. She looked normal. She didn't look like a villain. She looked like a mother, a woman with worries etched on her face. In that moment, I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She was living the same lie I was, just from the other side. She was waiting for her soon, for the real life he had promised her, just as I had been waiting for my husband to come back to me. She works as a paralegal at a small firm in Oak Creek, Arthur said. She's 38, no criminal record. She's lived at that address for 8 years. According to the neighbor, David or David Ellington, moved in with her about 2 years after she arrived. I stared at the photo of Elena. This was the other woman, not a fling, not a mistress, a partner, a wife in all but name. The secret wasn't a person, it was an entire, parallel universe, running smoothly alongside my own, sustained by my husband's double life. I thanked Arthur Brigham, my voice hollow. I paid his retainer with a check from my personal account, an account David rarely looked at. I walked out of his office and into the bright, ordinary afternoon. The sun was shining. People were going about their days. The world was utterly, cruelly the same. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, the folder of photographs on the passenger seat. The other woman was no longer a ghost or a name in an email. She was a person with a face, a job, a son. She was the beneficiary of my husband's love, his time, and my family's money. The numbness began to recede, and in its place, a cold, sharp, and terrifying clarity began to form. This was war, and I now knew the face of the enemy. It wasn't just Elena. It was the man I had called my husband, the man who had to look his children in the eye and tell them he had replaced them. Knowing the truth is one thing, deciding what to do with it is another. I carried the P.I. folder around with me for 2 days like a radioactive core. I hid it under the spare linens in the hall closet, then moved it to my car's glove compartment, then finally, feeling like a character in a bad spy novel, taped it to the underside of a rarely used drawer in my sewing box. The evidence was a live wire, electrifying everything it touched. I knew Clara was right. I shouldn't confront him. I should go straight to a lawyer. Let them handle it. Let the system do its work. But a feral, wounded part of me rebelled. This man had shared my bed, my body, my secrets for 25 years. He had held my hand through childbirth. He had seen me at my most vulnerable. He didn't get to have this revealed through a legal document served by a stranger. He owed me a look in the eye. He owed me the truth, from his own mouth, even if it was a lie. I chose a Thursday. The kids both had after-school activities. Ben at robotics, Lily at choir that would keep them out until 6. David had said he would be home by 5. It gave me a window. That day, I cleaned the house. I don't know why. Maybe it was nervous energy. Maybe it was a final, futile attempt to impose order on the chaos that was about to be unleashed. I scrubbed the kitchen counters until they shone. I vacuumed the carpets. I arranged the pillows on the sofa with military precision. I was building the stage for the execution of my marriage. At 4:30, I changed my clothes. I put on a simple dark dress. I brushed my hair and applied a little lipstick. I wanted to look strong. I wanted to feel in control, even though I was shaking apart inside. At 5:15, I heard his car in the driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I stood in the center of the living room, my hands clasped in front of me to stop them from trembling. The door opened. "Honey, I'm home," he called out. The same cheerful, empty greeting. He walked into the living room, dropping his briefcase by the door. He looked tired but satisfied. "The Henderson deal is finally, officially, done. We should celebrate. Maybe we can get—" He stopped. He saw me standing there, my posture, my face. The casual smile slid from his lips. "Ruth? What's wrong? Are the kids okay?" "The kids are fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, cold and flat. "Sit down, David." He frowned, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. "What's this about?" "I've had a long day. Sit down." The command in my voice was so foreign, so absolute, that he actually took a step back. Then, slowly, he sat on the edge of the armchair, his body tense. "Ruth, what is going on?" I didn't sit. I remained standing, looking down at him. I wanted the height advantage. I wanted him to feel small. "I know, David," I said, the words dropping into the quiet room like stones. He blinked. "You know what?" "I know about Elena." There it was. A barely perceptible flinch. a tightening around his eyes, but his face remained a mask of confused innocence. Elena? Who's Elena? Is this one of Lily's friends? The denial was so swift, so brazen, that for a second I doubted my own sanity. Had I dreamed it all? Had I concocted this elaborate fantasy? But then I felt the cold weight of the truth in my sewing box, and my resolve hardened. "Don't," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Don't you dare insult me by lying. Not any more. I know about Elena Vasquez. I know about Oak Creek Manor Apartments. I know about Mateo." The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The mask was cracking. I saw the calculations going on behind his eyes, the frantic search for an exit, for a new lie that could contain this. "Ruth." "I can explain," he began, his voice shifting to a placating, wounded tone. "It's not what you think. She's a client, a vulnerable client. She was in a bad situation, and I was trying to help her. The boy, he latched onto me. He calls me Papa because he doesn't have a father. It's a misunderstanding." I actually laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. "A misunderstanding. You have a second driver's license, David. You have a will that leaves everything to your beloved wife, Elena. You've been paying her rent for 6 years. You go to parent-teacher conferences for Mateo. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a second life." The shock on his face that I knew this much was almost comical. The last of his defenses crumbled. The placating tone vanished, replaced by a cold, hard anger. He stood up, his own height now a threat. "You've been spying on me?" he snarled. "Going through my private things. You had no right." The audacity of it, the sheer, breathtaking gall, took my breath away. I had no right? My voice rose, shaking with a fury I had never known I possessed. I had no right to know that my husband has another family? That he's been stealing from his children to support his bastard son? "Don't you call him that," he shouted, stepping toward me, his finger jabbing in my direction. "He is my son. He is just as much my son as Ben is." The confirmation, roared in anger, was more final than any document. The last fragile thread of hope snapped. "And what am I, David?" I screamed back, tears of rage finally springing to my eyes. "What are Ben and Lily? We're the other family. The one you come home to when you're done playing house with your real family?" "It's not like that," he yelled, running a hand through his hair, his composure completely gone. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. You with your book clubs and your little projects, living in this perfect, bubble-wrapped world. You have no idea what it takes to keep all of this afloat." He gestured wildly around the room, at the house I maintained, for the children I raised. "So this is my fault?" I was shrieking now, the pain and rage erupting like a volcano. "Your betrayal is my fault because I made a comfortable home for you, because I loved you, because I trusted you? I never meant for it to happen," he cried, his own voice cracking, but I saw no real remorse, only the panic of a man caught. "It just did. Elena. She understands me. She doesn't make demands. She's grateful." "Grateful?" I spat the word. "You mean she's poor, and you're her meal ticket. You think she loves you. She loves the money you steal from your own children. That's enough." He roared, and for a terrifying second, I thought he might hit me. He took another step forward, his face contorted with a rage I had never seen. But I stood my ground, my own fury a shield. "No, it is not enough." I shot back. "It will never be enough. You have destroyed everything. You have broken this family into pieces, and for what? For a cheap apartment and a woman who's grateful? You're a cliché, David. A pathetic, middle-aged cliché. The insult hit its mark. His face went purple. Get out, he hissed. Get out of my house. I laughed again, the sound wild and unhinged. Your house? This is our house, the house I decorated, the house I clean, the house where I raised your children. You don't get to throw me out. You are the one who needs to leave. Get out. Go to your real family. See how long the gratitude lasts when the money runs out. We stood there, chests heaving, staring at each other across a chasm that could never be crossed. The man I was looking at was a stranger. The David I loved was gone, if he had ever existed at all. The sound of a key in the front door froze us both. Mom? Dad? We're home. Lily's voice called out. The fight drained out of us both, replaced by a cold, sick dread. The curtain had come down. The performance had to resume. David smoothed his hair, his hands trembling. He forced a smile onto his face, a ghastly parody of normalcy. I turned away, wiping my eyes frantically with the back of my hand, trying to compose my features into something that wouldn't terrify my daughter. Lily bounded into the room, followed by a sullen Ben. What's for dinner? I'm starving. I'm not sure, sweetie, I said, my voice hoarse. I haven't started anything yet. David cleared his throat. Why don't we order pizza? He said, his voice too bright, too loud. Yeah, okay, Ben said, not looking up from his phone. They didn't notice. They didn't see the wreckage strewn across the room, the invisible blood on the floor. They just saw their parents standing in the living room. The confrontation was over. The war had just begun. And the hardest part protecting our children from the shrapnel was now my sole, terrifying responsibility. After the confrontation, a terrible, silent Cold War settled over our home. David and I moved around each other like ghosts, speaking only when necessary for the children's sake. The air was thick with things unsaid, with betrayal and rage simmering just beneath a thin veneer of normalcy. He slept in the guest room, claiming a bad back. I didn't object. The thought of him touching me made my skin crawl. The folder from the private investigator was now in a safety deposit box, along with the will and the most damning of the financial documents. I had followed Claire's advice to the letter and secured a lawyer, a sharp, formidable woman named Miriam Levine, who specialized in high net worth, complex divorces. Her office was a sleek, modern space that felt a world away from my chaotic emotional state. I sat across from her, my hands folded in my lap, as I laid out the entire sordid story. I showed her the copies of everything. She listened, her expression neutral, occasionally making a note on a legal pad. When I finished, she set her pen down. Ruth, she said, her voice calm and direct, this is one of the most egregious cases of marital fraud I have seen. Bigamy, hidden assets, financial dissipation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, we have a very strong position. But you need to understand, this will be a war. David is not going to give up his second life without a fight. He will fight dirty. He will try to paint you as unstable, as a spendthrift, as a negligent mother. You need to be prepared. He wouldn't, I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew he would. The man who had screamed at me in the living room was capable of anything. He would, and he will, Miriam said firmly. My first priority is to file a motion for exclusive use of the marital home and for temporary spousal and child support. We will also file for an injunction to freeze the assets we know about. But to do that effectively, we need to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. We need to know more about Elena Vasquez. A few days later, Miriam called me back. I have the preliminary report from our asset search and the background on Miss Vasquez. I think you should come in. When I arrived, her face was grim. It's worse than we thought, Ruth. She spread out new documents on her desk. David didn't just have secret accounts. He's been systematically siphoning money from your joint investments for years. He took out a second mortgage on this house 6 months ago without your knowledge or signature. He forged your name. I felt the room tilt. What? The proceeds, over $250,000, were wired to an LLC he set up, which then paid for a down payment on a condominium in Oak Creek. A condominium purchased 6 months ago in the names of David Ellington and Elena Vasquez. He had bought them a home. He had risked our house, the roof over, our children's heads, to buy his secret family a home. There's more, Miriam said gently, seeing the devastation on my face. Elena Vasquez. She's not just a paralegal. She and David, they were married. In a private ceremony in Mexico 4 years ago. The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. Married. Bigamy. It wasn't just a turn of phrase in an email. It was a legal, criminal fact. How is that possible? I stammered. It's not legally binding in the United States, as he was already married to you, Miriam explained. But it shows clear intent. It shows the depth of the deception. To her, and to the world, he presented himself as a single man. He committed fraud against her, as well. I thought of the photograph of Elena, the worry in her eyes. She was a victim, too. A dupe. She had believed his lies, built a life with him, borne his child, all under the impression that he was hers alone. A strange, hollow pity for her mixed with my all-consuming rage at him. I want to see it, I heard myself say. Miriam looked up, startled. See what? The condo. I want to see where my money went. I want to see the life he built with the money he stole from me. Ruth, I don't think that's wise. It will only cause you more pain. I need to see it, I insisted, a cold determination settling over me. I need to make it real. Miriam reluctantly gave me the address. The following Saturday, I told the kids I was going to a gardening center. I drove the 2 hours to Oak Creek, a pleasant, middle-class town with good schools and nice parks, the kind of town you'd choose to raise a family in. I found the condominium complex. It was new, attractive, with manicured lawns and a swimming pool. I parked my car across the street, my heart thudding dully against my ribs. I felt like a stalker, a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. And then I saw them. It was like watching a play about my own nightmare. David's car was in the driveway. The garage door was open, and I could see a child's bicycle, a bright red tricycle. Our son Ben had a blue one, just like it, years ago. The front door of the condo opened, and David walked out. He was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt, carrying a toolbox. He looked relaxed, domestic. This was his weekend uniform here. At home, he'd be in golf clothes or glued to his laptop. A moment later, Mateo ran out, clutching a toy airplane. He was the spitting image of Ben at that age, the same cowlick, the same sturdy legs. He zoomed around the driveway, making engine noises. David watched him, a fond smile on his face, the same fond smile he used to have for Ben. Then Elena came out. She was holding a watering can. She said something to David, and he laughed. She smiled back, and for a moment they looked like any happy, young couple on a Saturday morning. They looked like we used to look. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as David put his arm around Elena's shoulders and pulled her close, kissing her temple. The intimacy of the gesture was a knife to my heart. This wasn't just a secret he kept. This was a life he lived. A life of quiet, Saturday mornings, of shared chores, of easy affection. He had taken the blueprint of our marriage, of our family, and he had replicated it here, with her. I saw him look at Matteo with unguarded, proud love. He was present here. He was the father I had always wanted him to be for our children, but whom he had become too busy, too stressed, too distant to be in recent years. All that energy, all that love, had been diverted here, to this street, this condo, this other son. I saw Elena look at David, and her face was full of a quiet, possessive love. She believed this was her life. She believed he was her husband. She had no idea that just 2 hours away there was a woman whose life she had cannibalized, whose children's future she was unwittingly helping to destroy. I didn't cry. I was past tears. I just felt a vast, empty coldness. This was the second family. It wasn't a sordid affair in a hotel room. It was a home. It was a child calling him Papa. It was a woman who believed she was his wife. The scale of it, the audacity of it, was breathtaking. He hadn't just fallen in love with someone else. He had built a fortress against me, against us. He had created a sanctuary where he could play the hero, the provider, the devoted family man, while casting me in the role of the nagging, demanding wife from whom he needed to escape. I started the car and drove away. I didn't look back. The image was burned into my brain forever. My husband, living another man's life, a life he had paid for with mine. The second family was no longer an abstraction. It was a condominium with a red tricycle in the garage. And it was the final, irrefutable proof that the man I had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who would stop at nothing to preserve his beautiful, terrible lie. There is a particular flavor of betrayal that comes not from the heart, but from the ledger book. The emotional devastation was a raw, open wound, but the financial betrayal was a slow-acting poison, one I was only just beginning to feel the effects of. Seeing the condo, the tangible evidence of where our money had gone, made the abstraction of bank statements terrifyingly concrete. I was no longer just a wronged wife. I was a CEO discovering her partner had been embezzling for years and the company was on the brink of collapse. Miriam Levine, my attorney, was my general in this new Cold War. She referred me to a forensic accountant, a quiet, unassuming man named Leo who had the demeanor of a librarian and the tenacity of a bloodhound. His domain was numbers, and he could make them tell stories of secrets and theft. I met him in Miriam's conference room, a sprawling mahogany table between us, covered in the files I had provided. Leo had a laptop and a calm, focused energy. "Mrs. Anderson," he began, pushing his glasses up his nose. "My job is to follow the money, and from what I've seen so far, your husband has been very, very busy." He turned his laptop screen toward me. On it was a complex, color-coded chart. "This is a simplified visualization of your marital financial ecosystem over the last 8 years. The green streams are income. The blue are legitimate expenses and investments. The red—" He paused, his finger tracing a web of crimson lines that spider-webbed out from the main accounts. "The red is the diversion." He zoomed in. "See this? Your joint investment portfolio. Over the last 5 years, it has seen consistent, above-average returns. But the capital has not grown proportionally. Why? Because David has been making regular, systematic withdrawals. He would label them as portfolio rebalancing fees or advisor commissions, amounts just small enough not to raise immediate flags. But taken together, He typed a command, and a final number appeared at the bottom of the screen. $287,500. That's $250,000, Ruth, Miriam said softly from beside me. Gone. I felt dizzy. Where did it go? Leo brought up another chart. It was funneled through a series of shell companies, a consulting firm, an investment holding LLC, all owned by David Ellington. From there, it was paid out as rent to the Oak Creek Manor apartments, and for the last 6 months, as mortgage payments on the condominium. It paid for 2 luxury vehicles, a Lexus SUV for Miss Vasquez and a BMW sedan for David to keep there. It paid for private school tuition, for vacations to Disney World and Cancun, for furniture, for everything. He showed me credit card statements I had never seen, accounts opened in his David Ellington alias, charges for jewelry, for spa days, for expensive dinners. The life he was living with her was not just comfortable, it was lavish. It was funded by and security of my children's future. Then there's the second mortgage, Leo continued, his voice devoid of judgment, which made the facts even more devastating. He forged your signature, Ruth. We have the document from the county recorder's office. He used this house, your home, as collateral to secure a loan for $250,000. That money was the down payment on the Oak Creek condo. The walls of the elegant conference room seemed to press in on me. He had risked our home, the place where our children slept, where we had built a life. He had put a lien on it to buy his secret family their dream home. The recklessness, the sheer malice of it, was beyond comprehension. What about his income? I asked, my voice a thin thread. His salary? That's another issue, Leo said, pulling up a new spreadsheet. His official W-2 from his employer has remained relatively flat for the last 3 years. But we've uncovered several performance bonuses and sales commissions that were paid directly to his David Ellington accounts, bypassing your joint finances entirely. He was hiding income on a significant scale. Miriam placed a hand on my arm. This is what we call financial dissipation. He was intentionally wasting marital assets on a non-marital relationship. In the eyes of the court, it's as if he took that money and set it on fire. We will demand that every penny be credited back to you in the settlement. He will be responsible for reimbursing your share of those dissipated funds. The words were a lifeline in a sea of despair. But they were just words on paper. The reality was that the money was gone. The college funds for Ben and Lily, which I had thought were robust, had been secretly raided. Our retirement accounts had been stagnant because he was siphoning off the growth. We were living in a beautiful house that was now a leveraged asset, its equity stolen. I drove home from that meeting in a trance. The world outside the car window looked the same, but I felt like I was navigating a landscape that had been mined. Every comfort, every security, had been revealed as a mirage. That night, after a silent dinner where David barely looked at me and the kids bickered over the last bread roll, I went to Ben's room. He was at his desk, a complicated math textbook open in front of him, his brow furrowed. "Hey, honey," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "How's it going?" "This is stupid," he grumbled. "I'm never going to use calculus. I want to go to trade school, be an electrician, make real money." My heart constricted. The college fund. The future we had always promised him. "An electrician is a great job," I said carefully. "But you should still keep your options open. College is a good experience." "It's a waste of money," he said, echoing a sentiment I'd heard from David for years. "Not everyone needs a fancy degree, Ruth. The world needs tradespeople." Now I understood the subtext, so we have more money for my other son. We'll figure it out, Ben, I said, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. You can be whatever you want to be. Later, I found Lily curled up on her bed, crying. What's wrong, sweetheart? Jessica's family is going to Italy for spring break. She sobbed. You and Dad said we would go one day, you promised. The promise from the restaurant, the one he'd used to placate me. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, the idea was a cruel joke. We couldn't afford a trip to the next state, let alone Italy. I know, baby, I whispered, stroking her hair. Things are complicated right now, but we will travel. I promise you that. It was a promise I had no idea how to keep, but I made it anyway. I had to. I was the only parent left who was living in reality. I called Auntie Grace that night, the weight of the financial abyss threatening to swallow me whole. He forged my signature, Grace. I wept into the phone. He stole from our children. He's left us with nothing. Oh, my darling, she whispered, her own voice choked with tears. That monster, that utter monster. Clara came on the line, her voice a blade cutting through the hysteria. Listen to me, Ruth, this is not nothing. This is a battlefield. And you have just been handed the enemy's playbook. That accountant? He's your weapon. That lawyer? She's your strategist. David thought he was being clever, but he's left a paper trail a mile wide. He got greedy, and greed makes people stupid. But the money is gone, Clara. The college funds, the house. The money is a number, Clara interrupted firmly. A number a judge can order him to repay. The house is an asset the court can award to you, free and clear of his dirty mortgage. He has exposed his underbelly. Now, you and Miriam go for the kill. You file for divorce immediately. You freeze every account. You take control. Her words were harsh, but they were a tonic. She was right. The shock and horror were paralyzing, but they were a luxury I could not afford. I had to stop being the victim and start being the commander of my own rescue. The next morning, I met with Miriam again. File the papers, I told her, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. File for divorce. And file the motion to freeze the assets. All of them. I want that second mortgage invalidated. I want every account with his name on it, as David Anderson or David Ellington, frozen solid. I want him to feel the walls closing in. Miriam gave a sharp, approving nod. It will be done. He'll be served at his office tomorrow. As I left her office, I didn't feel the giddy thrill of revenge. I felt a grim, cold determination. The financial abyss was deep and dark, but I was no longer standing on the edge, staring into it. I was gathering ropes and lanterns. I was going down into the darkness to get back what was mine. The war for my financial soul had begun, and I was finally ready to fight. Being served with divorce papers is a form of public shaming. It's a legal document delivered by a stranger, declaring to the world that your private life has become a public dispute. Miriam ensured David was served at his office, in the middle of a workday, maximizing the humiliation. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it because Clara was right. In a war, you must seize every tactical advantage. You must show your enemy you are not playing games. The fallout was nuclear. He stormed into the house that evening, his face a thundercloud, the folded legal papers crumpled in his fist. The children were in the family room, watching a movie. We need to talk. Now, he bit out, his voice low and venomous. I followed him into his office, closing the door. He whirled around, flinging the papers onto his desk. What the hell is this, Ruth? An injunction, freezing my accounts, my assets? You've frozen my business accounts. I can't pay vendors. I can't make payroll. Are you trying to destroy me? I'm trying to protect what's left of our children's future from you, I said, my voice cold. I would not let him see me tremble. Our children, he sneered. You're using them as a weapon. This isn't about them. This is about you being a jealous, vindictive bitch because I found happiness. The words were meant to wound, and they did, but the scar tissue over my heart was thick enough now to absorb the blow. Happiness you paid for with my money, David, with Ben's money, with Lily's money. It's my money, he roared. I earned it. I built that business. You just spent it. On this house, on your little hobbies, on whatever you wanted. The rewriting of history had begun. I was no longer the partner. I was the dependent, the spendthrift. The narrative he would use in court was taking shape right in front of me. The court will decide whose money it is, I said evenly, and the forensic accountant has a very interesting story to tell them. His eyes widened slightly, a flicker of fear behind the rage. He hadn't anticipated that. He thought he'd been too clever. You're bluffing. Am I? Ask your business in Oak Creek how their finances are looking with the accounts frozen. Ask Elena how she's going to make the mortgage payment on the condo you bought with our stolen equity. The use of her name, the specific details, hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back a step. You leave her out of this. She is this, I shot back. She and her son are the reason for all of this. You don't get to build a life with another woman on the ruins of mine, and then tell me to leave her out of it. The door to the office creaked open. Lily stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. Mom? Dad? Why are you yelling? David's expression shifted instantly to a mask of paternal concern. It's nothing, sweetheart. Your mother and I are just having a disagreement about money. Grown-up stuff. Go back to your movie. But the damage was done. The war was no longer contained to legal documents and hushed meetings. It had spilled into the hallways, and my children were standing in the crossfire. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. David, true to Miriam's prediction, fought dirty. His lawyer, a slick, aggressive man named Robert Thorne, filed a counter-petition. It was a masterpiece of character assassination. It claimed I was emotionally unstable, prone to fits of rage and paranoia. It cited the unfounded accusations I had made about his client's character. It claimed that I had been a negligent mother, obsessed with my volunteer work and social life, to the detriment of my children's well-being. It requested that he be granted primary physical custody of Ben and Lily, citing the need for a stable, calm home environment. When Miriam read me the document, I felt the floor drop out from under me. He wasn't just trying to protect his money, he was trying to take my children. It was the cruelest, most strategic blow he could have landed. He knew that my children were my heart, and he was aiming straight for it. It's a common tactic, Ruth, Miriam said, her voice grim. He seeks custody to gain leverage in the financial settlement and to punish you. He knows the threat alone will cause you immense emotional distress. We will fight it, and we will win. But you need to be prepared for a custody evaluation. A court-appointed psychologist will interview you, the children, and David. They will assess your home life. My home life. The home where I was now living with a man who looked at me with pure hatred. The home where every conversation was a potential landmine. The home where my daughter jumped at loud noises and my son retreated into a sullen, impenetrable silence. Ben, in particular, was pulling away. David had begun a campaign of subtle alienation. He'd take Ben out for burgers, just the two of them, and come back with my son looking at me with a new, critical eye. I overheard him one night in the garage. "You know your mom's just really stressed, buddy," David said, his voice oozing false sympathy. "She's not thinking clearly. All this lawyer stuff, it's making her act in ways she normally wouldn't. But you and me, we're solid, right? I'll always be your dad, no matter what." He was positioning himself as the sane, stable parent and me as the hysterical woman tearing the family apart. I felt myself crumbling under the pressure. The fear of losing my children was a constant, gnawing terror in my gut. I stopped sleeping. I lost weight. The reflection in the mirror was of a gaunt, haunted stranger. It was Auntie Clara who staged an intervention. She and Grace showed up one afternoon after David had left for work. They took one look at me and marched me into the living room. "This has to stop, Ruth," Clara said, not unkindly. "He is winning. Look at you. You're letting him win." "He's trying to take my children, Clara," I whispered, the tears finally coming. "How am I supposed to fight that?" "By being their mother," she retorted. "The mother you have always been. The one who knows Ben hates the crusts on his sandwiches and that Lily needs to be sung to sleep when she has a nightmare. He can't take that from you unless you hand it to him. Stop reacting to his moves and start making your own." Grace sat beside me, taking my hand. "She's right, my love. You are the rock of this family. You have been since the day they were born. David can buy them burgers and tell them stories, but he doesn't know the deep, quiet rhythm of their hearts. You do. So show them. Show the court. Show everyone." That night, I didn't hide in my room. I went into the family room where Ben and Lily were listlessly watching TV. I didn't try to talk about the divorce. I just sat with them. I made popcorn the way they liked it, with extra butter. When a comedy came on, I laughed, a real laugh, and after a moment, I heard Lily giggle beside me. Ben didn't laugh, but he didn't leave either. It was a small victory, but it was a start. The war was raging on two fronts now, the financial and the custodial. David had thrown everything he had at me, hoping to break me. But as I sat there with my children, surrounded by the simple, buttery smell of popcorn, I felt a flicker of the old strength Grace had spoken of. He had attacked the mother in me. It was the worst mistake he could have made, because a mother fighting for her children is the most formidable force on earth. The war was far from over, but I had just found my will to fight back. They say it takes a village to raise a child. I discovered it also takes a village to survive a war. My village, in those darkest of days, was small but mighty. It was anchored by two women, one who offered a soft place to fall, and one who handed me a sword and demanded I get back on my feet. Auntie Grace became my sanctuary. She would appear at my door with a casserole, a pie, or just her gentle presence. She didn't always offer advice. Often, she just listened. She'd sit with me at the kitchen table while I cried tears of sheer exhaustion and fear, her hand covering mine, her silence more comforting than any words. He told Ben I was unstable. I sobbed one afternoon, my head in my hands. My own son looked at me this morning like he was afraid of me. "Oh, Ruthie," she murmured, her voice thick with shared pain. "That's his poison, and he's trying to drip it into your son's ear. But Ben is a smart boy. He has your heart. He knows his mother. He might be confused and angry right now, but he knows love. And he knows you are made of it." She took over the practicalities I was too overwhelmed to handle. She coordinated the kids' schedules. She ran interference with the school when I was too emotionally raw to speak to anyone. She made sure there was always food in the fridge. She was the steady, beating heart of our support system, a reminder that love still existed in the world. Auntie Clara was the strategist. She was my drill sergeant, my intelligence officer, and my chief of staff, all rolled into one formidable, no-nonsense package. She came over one evening after the children were in bed. She poured 2 glasses of whiskey, a spirit I never drank, and pushed one into my hand. "Drink," she commanded. "Now, update me. What is Miriam's next move regarding the forged mortgage?" I took a sip, the liquor burning a path of warmth down my throat. "She's filed a motion with the court to have it declared invalid. The hearing is in 3 weeks. She says the evidence is overwhelming, but what? But David's lawyer's arguing that I must have known, that I benefited from the liquidity it provided." My voice wavered. "They're making me out to be complicit." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Nonsense. That's a smokescreen. They have no proof because it doesn't exist. Now, the custody evaluation. This is critical. You must be prepared." She proceeded to grill me as if I were a witness on the stand. "What will you say when they ask you to describe your relationship with your son? What are Ben's strengths, his weaknesses? What is Lily most afraid of? How do you discipline them? What is your plan for providing stability during this transition?" She forced me to articulate my motherhood, to define it in clear, unassailable terms. She made me practice my answers until they were no longer emotional pleas, but confident, factual statements. "You are not a victim in that evaluation room, Ruth," she said, her gaze intense. "You are an expert witness on your own children. You are the lead architect of their lives. Present yourself as such." Her belief in me was not soft or gentle, it was hard and demanding, and it was exactly what I needed. She didn't coddle my fears, she dissected them and showed me how to defeat them. My village expanded. Miriam Levine, my attorney, became more than a hired gun. She was a confidant and a fellow warrior. The mothers from Lily's school, who had heard whispers of the ugly divorce, surprised me. One of them, Sarah, a woman I'd always considered a casual acquaintance, showed up one day with a gift card for a local restaurant. "I don't know the details, and I don't need to," she said, her tone straightforward and kind. "But I know what it's like to have your world turned upside down. Take your kids out for a meal where no one has to cook or clean. Give yourself one night off." It was a small gesture, but it reminded me that there was a world outside the battlefield, a world of simple kindness. Even my son, in his own teenage way, began to show signs of the man he was becoming. After a particularly tense dinner, where David had been needling me about legal fees, Ben followed me into the kitchen. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice low. I was scrubbing a pot with a ferocity it didn't deserve. "I'm fine, Ben." He was quiet for a moment. "He's being a jerk," he finally said. I stopped scrubbing and looked at him. The simple, blunt statement coming from him was a balm. He saw it. He might not understand the full scope of the horror, but he saw the day-to-day meanness. "Yeah," I said softly. "He is. I'm not a kid anymore. I see stuff." He shuffled his feet. "I don't want to go live with him. If it comes to that." Tears pricked my eyes. It was the first time he had acknowledged the custody battle aloud. It was the first time he had openly chosen me. "You don't have to worry about that, honey," I said, my voice thick. "I will never let that happen." He gave a curt nod, then awkwardly patted my shoulder before retreating to his room. It was a small moment, a few mumbled words, but it felt like a seismic shift. My village now included my son. The day of the custody evaluation arrived. I was a bundle of raw nerves. Clara had insisted on coming with me, though she couldn't be in the room. She waited in the lobby, a silent, formidable sentinel. The evaluator, Dr. Evans, was a woman with a calm, unreadable face. She asked all the questions Clara had prepared me for, and some she hadn't. She asked about my childhood, my relationship with my parents, my feelings about David. I answered honestly, but I followed Clara's advice. I spoke not from a place of hurt, but from a place of fact. I talked about Ben's passion for engineering and how we were looking at summer programs. I talked about Lily's anxiety and the strategies we used to manage it. I described our routines, our traditions, the fabric of our daily life. When she asked about the allegations of instability, I didn't get defensive. I simply said, "I have been under immense stress, Dr. Evans, as anyone would be, upon discovering their life is a lie. But my priority, my only priority, has been the well-being of my children. Their happiness and security are the foundation upon which I have built my life." I left the evaluation feeling drained but clear. I had done my best. Later that week, I sat with Grace and Clara in my living room, the three of us sipping tea. The fear was still there, a cold stone in my belly, but it was no longer alone. It was surrounded by the warmth of their presence, by the strength I was drawing from them. "I couldn't do this without you," I said, my voice breaking. "Either of you." Grace smiled, her eyes shining. "This is what family is for, my love. We are your harbor in the storm." Clara gave one of her rare, genuine smiles. "Nonsense. You're doing it yourself, Ruth. We're just the scaffolding. You're the one rebuilding the house." And in that moment, I believed her. The strength of my sisters had not been a crutch, it had been a mirror, showing me a strength that had been inside me all along. The war was still raging, the outcome uncertain, but I was no longer a scared civilian caught in the crossfire. I was a soldier, armed and armored, and I was standing my ground. The hum of the courthouse, air conditioning, was a constant. Low drone, the sound of institutional indifference. It was the soundtrack to the most important day of my life. We were finally here, in a room of polished wood and stern faces, for the preliminary hearing that would set the tone for the entire divorce. This wasn't the final trial, Miriam explained. But it was a critical battle, a chance to present our most damning evidence and secure temporary orders for support and custody. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Miriam, my back straight, my hands folded neatly on the cool wood in front of me. I wore a simple, navy blue dress, conservative, strong, the kind of thing Clara had approved of with a sharp nod. I felt like an imposter in my own skin, an actor playing the part of a composed woman. Inside, I was a churning sea of terror. David sat at the adjacent table with his lawyer, Robert Thorne. He looked handsome in his tailored suit, every inch the successful, wronged businessman. He didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed ahead, a mask of stoic resolve. I saw the faint sheen of sweat on his temple. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Judge Irene Moore. Miriam had said she was fair, but had little patience for theatrics or deception. We rose, then sat, and the proceedings began. Thorne went first, painting a picture of a hard-working man driven to distraction by an emotionally volatile wife. He spoke of my unfounded accusations, my reckless spending that had forced David to seek creative financial solutions, and my alienation of the children from their loving father. He requested minimal spousal support, shared custody, and that the asset freeze be lifted so David could continue to provide for his family. It was a masterful performance of victim blaming. I felt the heat of anger rise in my cheeks, but I kept my face neutral, just as Clara had drilled into me. Then it was Miriam's turn. She stood, calm and poised. Your Honor, if it pleases the court, the narrative put forth by Mr. Thorne is a fiction, a desperate attempt to obscure a years-long campaign of marital fraud, bigamy, and financial abuse. She began methodically, laying the foundation. She entered the private investigator's report and photographs into evidence. She showed the judge the smiling family in the park, David pushing his son, Matteo, on the swing. She presented the bank statements, the flows of money from our joint accounts to the secret ones. Thorne objected repeatedly, but Miriam was unflappable. She then called Leo, the forensic accountant, to the stand. In his quiet, methodical way, he dismantled David's entire financial existence. He showed the judge the charts, the red streams of diverted funds, the forged second mortgage. He stated the numbers with cold clarity. The $287,500 in dissipated assets, the $250,000 stolen from our home's equity. I watched the judge's face. Her expression remained impassive, but her eyes grew harder, her lips a thinner line as Leo spoke. Then Miriam played her ace. Your Honor, we have demonstrated the respondent's pattern of deception and financial malfeasance. But we have yet to show the depth of his intent to disinherit his first family, an intent that proves his conscious abandonment of his marital and paternal duties. She approached the bench. I would like to enter into evidence, Exhibit 17, a document retrieved by my client from a locked box in the marital home. It was the will. The last will and testament of David Ellington. A ripple went through the courtroom. Thorne shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This document is irrelevant to these proceedings and was obtained illegally. The document speaks to intent, Your Honor, Miriam countered calmly. And it was discovered in the marital home, to which my client has full legal access. Judge Moore looked from Miriam to Thorne. I'll allow it. Overruled. Miriam handed the document to the judge, then placed a copy in front of David. I saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the edge of the table. He had gotten sloppy. In his arrogance, he had kept the original, never imagining I would find it. Judge Moore read the document, her face a granite mask. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the hum of the air conditioner and the rustle of the paper. She finished reading and looked up, her gaze settling on David. It was not a friendly look. Mr. Anderson, she said, her voice like ice. Or should I address you as Mr. Ellington? Would you care to explain this document to the court? David looked at Thorne, who gave a slight, almost imperceptible, shake of his head. David cleared his throat. Your Honor, that document, it was drafted during a period of great stress. It does not reflect my true intentions. Does it not? The judge asked, her tone dangerously quiet. It seems very specific. It leaves the entirety of your estate, including assets held under the name David Anderson, to one Elena Vasquez, whom you designate as your beloved wife, and to your son, Matteo Ellington. It leaves a token $1,000 each to your children, Benjamin and Lily Anderson. It is dated 8 months ago. This does not seem to be the product of a fleeting mood. Your Honor, David began, but the judge held up a hand. I have heard enough for the purposes of this hearing. She turned to Miriam. Counselor, your motions. Miriam stood. Your Honor, based on the overwhelming evidence of dissipation, fraud, and the respondent's clear intent to disinherit his lawful children, we request exclusive use of the marital home for my client and the children. We request temporary spousal and child support at the levels outlined in our briefing. We request that the current asset freeze remain in place. And we request that primary physical custody be granted to my client, with the respondent's visitation to be supervised. Given his established pattern of deceit and the potential for him to flee the jurisdiction with the minor children. Supervised? David hissed the word, his mask finally cracking. Judge Moore ignored him. She made notes on a pad, her pen scratching decisively. The wait felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up. The court finds the petitioner's evidence compelling and deeply troubling. Motion for exclusive use of the marital home is granted. Mr. Anderson, you have 30 days to remove your personal effects. The temporary support is granted as requested. The asset freeze will remain in place, and all accounts under the name David Ellington are hereby sequestered and placed under the control of a court-appointed receiver. She paused, her eyes locking with David's. Regarding custody, the court is gravely concerned by the respondent's behavior. Creating a second family and a second identity demonstrates a profound lack of judgment and moral character. However, there is no evidence of physical harm to the children. Therefore, primary physical custody is granted to the petitioner, Ruth Anderson. Visitation for the respondent, David Anderson, will be standard, but it is to be therapeutic visitation, supervised by a licensed family therapist, until such time as the therapist deems it in the children's best interest to proceed otherwise. The gavel came down. Crack. It was over. I felt a wave of dizziness, a mixture of relief and residual terror so potent it was nauseating. We had won. We had won everything we asked for. The house was mine. The support was granted. The money was frozen. I had primary custody. I looked at David. The color had drained from his face completely. He looked ruined. The confident facade was gone, replaced by the stunned expression of a man who has just seen his entire world collapse in a single, decisive blow. The revelation of the will had been the kill shot. It had taken his secret, selfish fantasy and held it up for the entire court to see, proving he was not just an adulterer, but a man who had actively planned to erase his first family from his legacy. As we stood to leave, he finally met my eyes. The rage was gone, replaced by something else, a kind of hollow, dawning horror. He had underestimated me. He had thought I was just the wife, the mother, the woman who folded the laundry. He hadn't counted on the fighter I could become. Outside the courtroom, in the bright, echoing hallway, I leaned against the cool wall, my legs trembling. Miriam placed a steadying hand on my arm. "You were perfect, Ruth." The will. That was a masterpiece. He never saw it coming. Auntie Grace and Clara were waiting, their faces etched with anxiety. When they saw my expression, Grace burst into tears of relief, and Clara allowed herself a small, tight, triumphant smile. "It's done," I whispered. "For now, it's done." But as we walked out of the courthouse into the blinding sunlight, I knew it wasn't truly over. The legal battle had been won, but the emotional war for my family's soul was just beginning. Yet, I was no longer the woman who had knelt vomiting on her husband's office floor. I was Ruth Anderson's survivor, and I had just won my first major victory. Victory in court is a paper reality. It exists in orders and decrees, in frozen accounts and mandated support payments. But life, the messy, day-to-day business of living, continues in the space between the legal lines. The month after the hearing was a strange, liminal period, a bridge between the war zone my home had been and the peace I was desperately trying to build. David moved out. It was a sullen, tense process conducted under the 30-day deadline. He took his clothes, his golf clubs, his expensive stereo system. He left behind the ghost of his presence a faint line of dust on the shelf where his awards had been, the empty space in the garage where his car used to park. The silence he left behind was at first unsettling, then gradually, blessedly, began to feel like peace. The first night we spent alone in the house, just the kids and me, was terrifying. The emptiness was a physical presence. We ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor, a picnic in the ruins of our old life. "So, he's really not coming back?" Lily asked, her voice small. "No, honey," I said, my heart aching. "He's not." Ben just grunted, shoving a large slice of pizza into his mouth. But later, I heard music coming from his room, loud, defiant rock music he hadn't listened to in months. It was his way of claiming his space. The therapeutic visits with David began. He would pick them up, a strange smile on his face, and they would go to a therapist's office where they would play board games or talk under the therapist's watchful eye. They came back quiet and contemplative. Lily would sometimes cry afterward. Ben would retreat into silence. It was necessary, Miriam said, for them to rebuild a relationship with their father on terms that were safe and structured. But it was agony to watch. The financial reality was also a daily adjustment. The support payments were adequate, but they were a fraction of what we were used to. I had to learn to budget with a ferocity I'd never needed before. I cut coupons. I canceled cable. I started shopping at discount grocery stores. It was humbling, but there was a strange pride in it. Every dollar I saved was a dollar that was mine, earned not through deception, but through my own careful stewardship. I had to find a job. My resume was a patchwork of volunteer work and a long-ago degree in literature. The world of PTA committees and charity galas didn't translate well to a paying career. The rejections were constant, a drumbeat of discouragement. It was Auntie Clara, ever practical, who shoved me toward my salvation. "You've been managing a complex household for 20 years, Ruth. You're a project manager, a negotiator, a logistics expert. Stop applying for entry-level nonsense. And for heaven's sake, stop talking about your gap in employment. You didn't have a gap. You were the CEO of the Anderson family. Now sell that." I rewrote my resume. Instead of homemaker, I put household manager and family logistics director. I listed my skills: budgeting and financial planning, conflict resolution, event coordination, schedule management. I started applying for office manager, administrative coordinator, and personal assistant positions. Weeks went by with nothing. The fear of financial ruin, once an abstract legal concept, began to feel very real. Then I got a call. It was from a small, family-owned architectural firm. The owner, a woman named Anya Sharma, had been intrigued by my resume. "I'm a mother of 3, she said during the interview, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "I know what it takes to run a household and a business. This gap you're so worried about tells me you're organized, resilient, and you don't panic under pressure. Can you start next Monday?" I almost wept right there in her office. It was an entry-level position, but it was a foot in the door. It was a chance. The first day of work was terrifying. I bought a new, affordable blazer and drove to the office, my palms slick on the steering wheel. But as the days turned into weeks, I found a part of myself I thought I had lost. I was good at this. I was organized. I was calm. I could handle Anya's frantic schedule and the demands of the architects with a competence that surprised even me. For 8 hours a day, I wasn't David's betrayed wife or Ben and Lily's struggling mother. I was Ruth, the efficient office manager. It was empowering. At home, slowly, tentatively, we began to build new traditions. Friday night became movie night, with popcorn and a mandatory ban on phones. Sunday mornings, we started going for hikes in a nearby state park. The three of us, the silence of the woods more healing than any conversation. The house began to fill with our new energy. Lily put up a poster of a boy band I'd never heard of. Ben's messy, teenage chaos reclaimed the basement. The spaces David had occupied were slowly filled with us. The divorce proceedings ground on, a slow, paper-filled slog, but the frantic terror was gone. We were negotiating the final settlement now. Miriam was fighting to have the second mortgage voided and the dissipated assets credited to me. It looked promising. One evening, about 6 months after David had left, I was in the kitchen trying a new recipe when Ben came in. He leaned against the counter, watching me. "Smells good," he said. "Thanks, it's a gamble." He was quiet for a moment. "Mom." I looked up. "Bigamy. It's a crime." I stopped stirring, my back to him. "Yes, it is. He could go to jail." "I know." I turned to face him. "But that's not my decision to make. The district attorney would have to pursue it. My fight is to secure our future, not to destroy his." He nodded, digesting this. "I think I want to go to college after all for engineering." I talked to my guidance counselor. Tears sprang to my eyes, but this time they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. "Ben, that's wonderful." "Yeah, well, we'll figure it out, right?" he said, echoing my words from months ago. "We'll figure it out," I confirmed, my voice firm. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was older, yes. There were new lines around her eyes, a new gravity to her expression. But her shoulders were straight. Her eyes, while shadowed with the memory of pain, were clear. She had a job she was good at. She had children who were, against all odds, going to be okay. She had a home that was hers. I was reclaiming my life. Not the life I had before, the one built on the foundation of sand. I was building a new one, from the ground up, on a foundation of my own making. It was smaller, perhaps, simpler, but it was solid, it was real. And for the first time in a very, very long time, it was mine. The final divorce decree arrived in a thick, legal-sized envelope. I carried it to my favorite chair by the living room window, the one that catches the morning Sunday. The house was quiet. The kids were at school. I sat there for a long time, just holding the envelope, feeling the weight of it in my hands. This was it. The official, stamped, and sealed end of my marriage. The death certificate for the life I had known. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I looked around the room. The sunlight fell across the rug Lily had chosen for her birthday, a bright, bohemian thing I never would have picked, but that filled the room with her spirit. I saw the dent in the sofa where Ben always sat, the stack of my library books on the end table, a potted orchid from Grace thriving on the windowsill. This was no longer the marital home. It was our home. Mine, and Ben's, and Lily's. It was filled with our laughter, our arguments, our dreams, and our slow, steady healing. When I finally slid the document out, the terms were exactly what Miriam had said they would be. The house was mine, free and clear, the fraudulent second mortgage invalidated. The bulk of the remaining assets were awarded to me. The dissipated funds were credited against David's share, leaving him with very little. He was ordered to pay significant, ongoing child support and alimony for a period of 10 years. It was a total victory, on paper, but the real victory wasn't in the document. The real victory was in the quiet of this morning, in the peace I felt holding it. People ask me, sometimes, how I survived it. How I didn't end up broken, bitter, curled into a ball of resentment. The truth is, I was all those things, for a while. The betrayal was a bomb that blew my world to pieces. But you can't live in the rubble forever. Eventually, you have to start clearing it away, brick by painful brick. And in the clearing, you find things. You find out who you are when the labels are stripped away: the wife, the homemaker, the couple. You are just you, and that can be terrifying until it becomes liberating. I learned that love is not a guarantee. It's a choice, an action, every single day. And when someone stops making that choice, no amount of history or shared memories can glue the pieces back together. You have to accept that the person you loved is gone, and the person who remains is a stranger you need to protect yourself from. I learned about money. Not just how to budget, but how it can be a weapon of control and a tool of oppression. I learned that financial independence isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. Every woman should have her own name on accounts, her own credit, her own ability to walk away. Most of all, I learned about strength. It doesn't roar. It doesn't always look fierce. Sometimes, strength is just getting out of bed when every cell in your body wants to hide under the covers. It's making a peanut butter sandwich for your child when you haven't eaten yourself in 2 days. It's sitting through a custody evaluation and speaking about your love for your children when your heart is shattering. It's showing up for a job interview when you feel like a fraud. Strength is the million small, unglamorous acts of survival that, woven together, create a tapestry of resilience. I thought about David. The last I heard, through the tangled grapevine of mutual acquaintances, was that it had all fallen apart with Elena. Once the money was cut off, and the scale of his deception was fully revealed to her, the gratitude evaporated. She left him, taking Matteo. He was living in a small apartment, struggling under the weight of the support payments, a man who had gambled 2 families and lost them both. There was no satisfaction in it for me, only a profound, weary sadness. The karma wasn't a dramatic punishment, it was the natural, logical consequence of a life built on lies. The lies became the cage. My life now is not the one I planned. It's messier, it's harder. There are still days when the ghost of the old pain whispers to me. There are birthdays and holidays that are tinged with a bittersweet ache. But it is my life. I built it, I fought for it. I am closer to my children than I ever thought possible. We have an honesty between us that was never there before. Ben is applying to colleges, his old sullenness replaced by a focused ambition. Lily is blossoming, her anxieties lessening as she sees her mother stand on her own 2 feet. I have my job at the architectural firm, and I've even gotten a promotion. I have my sisters, my anchors, and I have myself. I know myself now, my flaws and my ferocity, in a way I never did when I was simply David's wife. So, if you're listening to this, and you're in the ruins of your own life, whether from betrayal or loss, or any of the countless ways a heart can break, I want you to hear me. I want you to hear Auntie Ruth. The pain is real. The fear is real. Let yourself feel it. Don't let anyone tell you to get over it. But don't set up a tent in the valley of despair either. Your life is not over. It is different. Look at the ruins. Then, pick up 1 brick. Just 1. Clean it off. And start building something new. It will be slow. It will hurt. You will get dirty and tired. But the house you build for yourself with your own hands on a foundation of truth and self-respect will be stronger and more beautiful than any castle built on sand ever could be. The lesson in the ruins is not about the destruction. It's about the rebuilding. And you, my dear, are the architect of your own beautiful, resilient, and utterly magnificent future. Now, go build it. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.